Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenny Zell, and I'm the moderator of today's webinar. In today's training webinar, we will focus on how to implement permissions in your dotCMS implementation. This webinar will be recorded, and it will be sent out after the webinar is over. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end with our speakers, so if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to add them to the chat box as we go along.
Permissions. Very, very granular. They're not really complex. There's just a lot to think about. They're very, very easy to apply. So I'm going to set up a complete user to kind of some of the areas that I've been working with and the content types that I've set up with you in the previous sessions. And one by one, we're going to permission a brand new user in the system, talk about things, take our time so all the concepts come across. Okay, so I'm going to log into the host we've been on. Alrighty. And so I'm going to set up maybe even another subfolder in here, and I will say maybe this one would be, I'm just going to make up some departments here. And then I'll say there's another department, and the department is called support. And then I'll make another department called let's just say they're all internal organizations, and then you have a main folder that instead of being called training, it's called departments. Okay. All right. So now that has rearranged itself alphabetically here in our tree. And let's just say I'm going to permission. Yeah, I do have some pages here. That's okay. I'll just leave those here. And I'll say, let's just do development because it's first in the list. I'm going to create a new page asset, and development home. And I'll make that the index page. That's how you make it if there's 20 pages, this is what you land on. And I'll do the quest, 2-column with side nav, and save and publish that. And I don't want to put any content yet. And maybe I'll even put an images directory here. And then we'll start permissioning this guy. Okay, and he has his own image directory, and we'll throw a few files here. And we will go to demo and posters and grab a few posters here. And then we're going to say we're going to save and publish these items. I'll execute that and upload them to the system. Now I have some things to permission, right? Okay. So whenever I'm talking in the agenda here about the host, I'm obviously talking about whatever host you're on, which that's going to be demo.dotcms.com in this case, right up here, right? Then if you see, notice I say parent folders and work folders, right? And parent folders, you only need view permission. Work folders, you need something more than view, either save or save and publish, right? And if we look back, what do I mean by parent folder? I mean departments. If there is really a development department, a human resources department, a support department, et cetera, in my organization, I'm not going to give development the ability to edit departments and call it, astronomy. I am not going to give him any access to edit that name of that folder at all. Or the same for human resources, same for support. I am going to give the developer the rights to add maybe new pages and new things inside of his own little development department. But I am not going to allow him to see the other sibling folders, which would be human resources and support, right? Each of the groups are only going to manage exactly what's inside their own folders and only see what's exactly in their own folders. And even though I'll give the human resource officer some of the same content types, none of them will be able to see the child content created using the same exact content type because they're all going to be forced to save to their own folders. And the content that they create will inherit the role permissions that I place on those folders. Okay, so the differentiation between what's a work folder, what roles I apply on a work folder where people are actually, individual groups are actually doing work, and then, which usually translates to different portions of the site, and then a departmental folder may be, necessary in your organization. If the only thing you have are webmasters who control the entire site, then that's not as relevant. But I'm trying to get as granular as possible on, the limited content publishing so that you can handle every use case, right? Or if you're setting something up for, if you're you're a partner and you're setting things up for a client, whatever use case they have, you can actually know how the permissions need to be set up to enable viewability to all of the objects that you're creating for them, right? Okay, so we're going to do host, and then that parent department folder, the work folder is going to be the development folder. Then we're going to cover all of the content types. And whenever you think about content types, you need to think about regular content types, and then what types of page content types are they allowed to use to create pages, and what type of files they're going to be uploading. Then the rest is just the categories that were on the content types. Whenever you give them access to templates, you need to look at the templates and then see what containers are actually used by those templates. And then you're done, and you can go ahead, and then there's one last thing you need to do to set up their tabs that they see on the back end for what features they're able to access of dotCMS. And then you create the user, give them the one role, or I'm going to recommend you give them every user 2 roles, and you test their user. Okay. Another thing I want you to observe about this list before I just start permissioning is there's only 2 types of objects that you even need to think whenever you're applying permissions. And that's work folders and content types. Everything else gets one checkbox view. So work folders, where they're actually creating pages, and content types, everything else you don't even need to think about the permission level that they get. It's just one checkbox. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. It's best practice. Okay. I am going to create a new developer or development publisher. Okay, so I'm going to come down here to System. So I'm going to close my browser for right now, site, and go to System and Roles and Tools. Okay, now here I have an intranet role, a publisher legal role, and then some system roles, right? That are our CMS admin role, etc. But you don't need to worry about that. You just set up a brand new role here. Sorry, I have a sneeze. Okay. So there is a 3-part role naming scheme if the client that you're working with is going to use multiple websites. The first would be something that would refer to the site itself. So here, if it's demo.dotcms.com, which we're editing right now, then the first thing would be demo. Or if it was dotcms.com, then I would put dotcms. If it was, one of our clients, HCA, I recommended to them HCA, maybe physician publisher. That's a big healthcare organization. And so they knew whether it was HCA or maybe if one of the clients that they were on, if it wasn't for the main group, if it was for an actual a hospital, maybe it was, Baptist, South Florida, physician publisher, if it was for an individual hospital. So whenever you have 1,000 different websites, it's important to actually make the first role name specific to that specific host. And you can combine system role, and you can, there's all sorts of things you can do for multi-tenant that could, that you might want to consult for. But if you are just doing one website, you don't expect any multi-tenant whatsoever, you could forego that very first naming nomenclature and then just say, development publisher. Right? But I'm going to just assume it's multi-tenant and use a 3-word scheme there. You don't really want to get much longer than that, because then it becomes real long in the tooth in the UI, And I might even say, maybe I can make that even shorter. I'll say, developer publisher, then here, this key is extremely important. And I like to camel case just because I like to camel case, not because I have to. Okay, this key is very, very important because it allows the synchronization with Active Directory. And let me show you how this key is very, very important so that you don't ever have to create users at all. Now I got you paying attention. So you don't have to do work. Isn't that nice? You don't have to do a thing. The only thing, if you follow this methodology, which I'm about to cover with you right now, then whenever it comes to setting up users and roles, you don't ever have to set up a user ever. You just do the following. And let me just close all this other stuff I had open here in Text Wrangler. Okay. So this is our role key. So you apply this role using the steps that we're going to cover, but after you take your 120 seconds, once you're an expert, to go ahead and apply the role everywhere you need to apply it, then you say, okay, sysadmin, you got it from here. And you tell the sysadmin to add whatever X amount of users, whoever the users are, right? You say add them in Active Directory to the, and you would say this Active Directory group, but no, because they've got a whole bunch of other, Active Directory groups that might look just, similar to this, right? How would you differentiate between the 5 Active Directory groups that they belong to in a .cms webmaster Active Directory group? So we give a prefix in our configuration. If you just do, Active Directory or LDAP in our documentation, you do a search, you'll see how to configure, LDAP. So we provide in our configuration files a prefix. Now, by default, it's .cms_, but you could change that if you don't like it. You could change it to something else in the config files and then just tell your sysadmins to use that other, config. Okay, so now your sysadmin has taken your user list, who you say is a developer publisher, and they've created this .cms_ demo developer publisher. And I'm going to recommend that you tell the sysadmins to add everyone to .cms_ generic publisher as well. And so every user will get this one, and then each individual user, who you think is a developer publisher or whatever, or a product publisher or a human resources publisher or whatever other departments the client has, then you'll go ahead and also give those individual user lists those corresponding roles that have the permissions over their specific department, right? So the user logs in. The user doesn't exist in .cms at all. You have it configured to go to Active Directory to validate. It goes over to Active Directory to validate. The password checks out, and they say, okay, this is a valid user. It grabs all of the first name, last name, email, everything it needs from Active Directory, and then stores that so it can create the user in .cms. And then it goes through the list of all of the Active Directory groups. The first Active Directory group has nothing to do with .cms. Then the second Active Directory group they have is also an internal one. The third that they have is also an internal one. Then it gets down to these last two that they're a part of, and it says .cms_. So it says, aha, okay, well, I don't have to do anything. They're trying to log into .cms with those other Active Directory groups, but these two are going to determine their permissions on this website they're trying to log into. The next thing it'll do is it'll strip off the prefix from those two roles that it cares about, and then it'll create the user automatically in .cms for you, and will assign them to those two roles, and the user, without even knowing it, within a fraction of a second, has their user created, is assigned to the roles, log in, and all is right with the world, as long as you have tested their role and their role permissions to make sure that everything's kosher. So that is why you need those keys, right? Whenever you're creating those roles. That is the totally unique, you cannot repeat role keys in the system, and that's what syncs with Active Directory. This little can grant down here, and I'll tell you how to make parent roles and child roles whenever we get to role inheritance. So we'll skip that for now, but if you create a top level role, it's just called system. And you're going to see it right on the main list here. It's not nested underneath another role. Can grant literally means, can I assign users to this role? Can I assign permissions to this role? Can I assign tools, which are these things on the left-hand nav, right, to this role? You want to checkbox all of those at the beginning, and then later on, if you decide, you know what, I don't want any more users assigned to this role, you can uncheck it. And then even other webmasters cannot assign users to this role until you come back and you check this. But that way you can tell other webmasters, hey, I'm disallowing this for a reason. Maybe you should check with me before you, try to apply more users to this group. And the same goes with, more additional permissions or additional tooling on the left-hand nav. Okay. So normally this is exactly the way you're going to set up every role in the system. You click save, right? So now we see our, did I click system? Oh yeah, I did. Okay. So somehow I'd clicked on system and I create them as a nested role. Darn it. Okay, so let's go back out here, and instead of clicking on system, let me hold down the control button and just refresh. Okay, sorry about that. I had actually clicked on system there. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to say, root role. So let's do that again. We can leave the other one there, it doesn't matter. So what did I call this guy? Yeah. So demo, developer, publisher. And now that he is a root role, we'll save. Okay. Really messed myself up here. I'll just quickly change his role key. I'll just delete it. Okay. Now I do not have that selected. And demo, developer, publisher, or root role, and perfect. Okay. If I click on another role, then I can create roles underneath that are managed by that top level role. So that's what I had accidentally done. I was kind of clicking around showing you the different roles in the system, and then I forgot that I was still selected on here. Okay, so we're clicked on Demo Developer Publisher, and he's highlighted, so I can see I've got no users here in the system so far. I can immediately start applying permissions, and I can immediately start assigning tools, which are these things on the left-hand side, little portlets that have features in them. And you can totally design, you can create your own custom tool group. You can click in on any of these roles, and you can assign other tools. So if you want any of the tools you see on the left-hand side here to be available under any of these, it's totally configurable. So if you want to see plugins under CMS admin, you could. Okay. All right, so I'm on my developer role. I don't want to assign users yet. I click on permissions. Okay. Now, if the system and CMS administrator role is the role that I'm logged into right now, and that is the absolute God level role. All right, I've got access to everything in the entire system. So that is the max role, and that's all I have to have. That's all I have right now, and nothing can stop me from getting access to objects except maybe locking roles and very few things. And I can still undo it even if there's a role locked by another administrator. Okay. There's also another system role. It's CMS Anonymous. That's all you have to do. You put that on your folders and files in the system, and that makes sure that it is available to the public. If you take the CMS Anonymous role off areas of your site, then it becomes instantly an intranet page or area of your site, and people have to log in. It checks their user role permissions to be able to see it. So there's some system roles here that give access to specific functionality within the system. But really, CMS Administrator and CMS Anonymous is all you need to know for 98% of all the permissioning. The others are mostly legacy roles. Okay, so the demo publisher. So if right now I'm logged in as CMS Administrator and he's Zeus on Mount Olympus, this all sites permission would be like Hercules. Also very atypical. And what does the Herculean role give access to? The demigod. If you're doing multi-tenant, and we've had very many cases where this is a very important role. So if you're managing 1,000 websites and you have designers who are creating templates for all those 1,000 websites, then you might want to give them this, so they can create those designs and templates and maybe template layouts here on all 1,000 websites, right? And you just have to do that and it's done. You just apply changes, and then any website that exists in the system, they have access to only templates, template layouts, and containers. Okay, so that's a one-stop shop for all your host permissions. However, that's very, very atypical. What the first thing that you're most likely going to do for a client is click over here and choose a specific host. In this case, we had that global. We know what the system host is. We've got demo.cms.com. I'm going to click here and add just that one host. And once again, what permission do I get? Don't even think. Just check view. That's it. Done. View, apply, done. Don't cascade permissions down to every child object underneath. It warns you here. Checking this option will take whatever permissions you're doing on the host and just wipe out all child folders, all departments, all content, all pages, all everything underneath it. If you try to do it, it'll give you, a couple of pop-up warnings and ask you if you're really sure you want to reset all the permissions of the child objects. And then if you do it, then you're gonna have to contact an administrator to get it back. Don't cascade things from the host unless it's an absolutely clean development site or something like that, and you're just doing initial setups of permissions and you want to, really affect the whole site whenever you apply your permissions. Okay, but it's very atypical. And if you just click apply permissions and then check the permissions and see if it's enough, and it is, then nothing lost, And then you can come back here later, and if you truly understand what you're doing, you can go and click cascade and cascade, but not from the host. I would say there's never a reason, well, there is, but very small percentage of the time there's a condition where you would even cascade permissions down from the host to all child objects. Okay. All right. So that is the host. We're done. The next thing we said that we were going to do is the parent folder. And what did we say was the parent folder? That was this departments folder, right? Click add on the departments folder. Once again, view. Now, why do we have to do that? Now, it does say that there are permissions that used to be inheriting from demo.dotCMS.com, which was the immediate parent of departments. So it says it's going to copy, instead of just everybody who used to have access to this department before these individual permissions, instead of just saying you no longer have access to this folder, it says I'm going to copy those permissions and make them independent permissions now in this folder. If you see this, that's fine. You click OK, but then what you should do is you could go over to your site browser and then edit your departments folder, and then see what other permissions other than the demo developer publisher got copied. And aha, I see this intrusive guy here that really he had permissions to demo.cms.com. He had permissions to all child folders. But whenever I'm individually permissioning this new folder, I want to break away his inheritance down over this object, and I want to just click apply and get rid of him. I don't want to take CMS Anonymous off. CMS Anonymous is not a back-end role at all. It affects nothing. Nobody can ever log in. Even if you gave CMS Anonymous permissions to everything, it would still fail on login. It is a front-end role only, so you want to keep it if you want your pages and files and things that you create to be public. So that's why all of the child objects are also checked, and that's also, that's what you want. So I would say there's never really, unless you're creating an intranet portion of your site, to touch CMS Anonymous. Just let it apply to your objects. Okay. So once again, departments is a parent folder. We don't need to do anything else. We click apply, it's applied, and that's it. Now, we can go back to the role and add the development folder, or we can just stay right here and apply it. Applying permissions here or from the role is, really the same thing. The only advantage here on the site browser tree is you're actually looking at the child permissions, looking at other roles that are applied on that object as well. So I'm just going to do it right here from the folder. Okay, if I click on permissions here and I click permission individually, then I can see that right now he's only got permissions. Okay, he's only got CMS Anonymous, and he's got this demo developer role here. I've permissioned him individually, and now I'm going to click. You have to click individually because you could have 1,000 roles here, right? I'm going to click individually, and this, because it's the development work folder, then according to our plan, whenever you get to the work folder, you need something other than view. You need either a save or a publish. So we're going to say that yes, you can edit and create new child folders. Yes, you can publish. This user can publish, because we said he's a publisher, new pages. If I was going to create someone who only had save permissions, maybe I would name that contributor or assistant or whatever you want to do. I use contributor for people who can't save and publisher for people who can publish. That's it. Or a contributor for people who can only save. And then do I want them to have publish rights over content types that are actually saved, like a form or something like that is saved to the developers area? Sure. Content and files that are saved to this work folder? Absolutely. I think rules, for the most part, unless you have really advanced kind of users or have advanced marketing needs or something like that, I would keep them away from rules engine rules on pages that are inside of that folder. So typically that's avoided. Sometimes even menu links. Some webmasters don't want to give publishers the ability to affect local navigation items. So sometimes they even stop menu links from being applied. Let's go ahead and do that though. And if I applied the permissions right now, then this user wouldn't be able to do anything inside of this directory except manage the objects that are already there. But this user would not be able to add one new folder, one new page, a new menu link, work with the content types that are in that folder, or work with the files that are in that folder. Or create new content types within the folder, or create new files within the folder. This user would only be able to edit existing objects that are already in the folder. And we have had some clients say, look, I just want these users to manage what's already there. Replace the content that's already there, but not add one new item to the page. They just change the text whenever it needs to be updated, and they click Save and Publish. That's it. And that's fine. The reason why is because there's this add to. And if you can't add to, you can't add one single thing new, even if you have full permissions to the child objects below. So that's a way you can actually allow people to even publish changes to the existing things, but not allow them to add additional objects. Okay. So this add to is kind of a master yes or no on new child objects. Okay. Now that I've clicked the add to the demo developer publisher folder, and I have these child folder permissions, let me conversely do this. Right now, even though the demo developer publisher has add to this folder, this user cannot create any new localized menu links at all, right? Because all of these permissions down here, the child objects, work in conjunction with the add to. And if you can add and you have permissions over the child object, then you can add new. But this user does not have permissions to create menu links, period, or rules, period, right? So the add to works together with those child permissions down below. Once again, there is a reset. So if there's a whole bunch of subfolders created inside of the demo developer publisher folder, then I could cascade them down at this level. I'm already inside the host. I'm already inside the department's parent folder. Now I'm inside my work area, and maybe there's an images directory that I want to affect, right? Now that images directory was inheriting, so it's already going to be inheriting from this parent folder. I really don't have to click this apply changes. So like I said, just click apply. Don't cascade and reset child permissions unless you read this little hint that says what it's going to do and you truly understand it. Okay. Just click apply, check your user, and if that's good enough, don't cascade and throw permissions down and overwrite other child object permissions. Okay. So another thing, I've seen webmasters come over here and start clicking on all of this. This would always pretty much be a mistake for a typical publisher. Why? What are you allowing them to edit whenever you click this top gray bar? You're actually allowing them to edit, and you're applying the permissions here on the demo developer publisher, on the development work folder, okay? We don't want them to change the name of the development work folder and call it, instead of the development, developers department, it is now, named something else. And now everybody works for a totally different department, right? That'd be bad. It'd change your navigation to your website. It's unintentioned, right? So you just want them to add child objects. You don't want them to edit the main object that you're permissioning. And here's your control over those child objects and how much level of permissions do they have over those child objects. So this would be a typical work folder permissions from what I've seen webmasters like to apply. I click the apply, no cascading, and now I've got my hierarchy. The host is permission, so they will be able to view the host to get to the parent folder. The parent folder just got a view, so they'll be able to dive down below the parent folder. If I just come here and permission the work folder, they have no access to anything at all. It's hierarchical, okay? And we don't, because you permission a work folder, we don't go to all the stuff above it and automatically start assigning permissions for you. We want permissions to be very intentional. We want the webmasters to look at the objects they're permissioning and assume full responsibility for those decisions. We don't want to do invisible permissioning for them and to do something unintentioned, right? Okay, so now we've done that with more than just the regular view. Now we need to think about the regular content types, page contents, and file content types that we want to give permissions to. So we would come over here to types and tags, content types, and think about the type of content we want them to have permission to. Since we need to do them in order, let's just go and start off with the regular content types. And maybe we'll sort them by name. And maybe I want to give them access to the cast content type that I created. And then I would give them access to the movies content type. And maybe I'll also do news. Okay. So let me go to the cast content type first, click on permissions, and then permission individually, and then add my new role. And you'll notice I can add roles or I can add users. So if you do have an exceptional user, after you apply your role, you got your demo developer and you click publish, and I want them to have publish access over all of the content they can create with this cast content type, right? I could also add one person who doesn't have that role, but happens to be a really, really savvy user, and I want that person involved, and I can involve an individual as well, right? So I'll click apply, and I didn't give him any permissions, so he disappears if he doesn't have permissions. Okay. Now, in this case, I'm going to click this reset button. Why? Okay, and for content types, you may wish to click it. There's a whole bunch of cast members for those movies that are already sitting in the database. By default, whenever you permission a content type, you click apply without clicking the reset, you are only affecting the content type. And now this user will be able to have access to all cast members in the system that are saved to his own little department, but he will not have any access to the previous created content that's sitting in the database. Clicking apply affects only future permissions. If you want to go dig into the database, look at the content that was already saved a long time ago, and redo the permissions of the content that's already existing, that's whenever you click this little check box. Okay, and for content, that might be, if you've created some test content you want them to see whenever you're developing, or sort of imported a whole bunch of content from another system you want to give them access to, you can apply. Now, anytime you click one of those checkboxes, it'll say, this will change the permissions of all objects in and beneath the selected site or folder and may take several minutes to apply. Are you sure you want to cascade these permissions? You click OK if you understand. And now it's cascading over the existing cast members. Of course, it's only going to take a fraction of a second for only the few cast members we have, right? Now, my relationship between cast and movies, obviously, I got to give them the access to the movies content type as well. So I'll just type MOV, and it instantly finds it. I didn't even have to press enter. I go to permissions, permission individually, and I go into demo developer publisher, and click publish. And I'm also going to reset over all those movies. I want Ratatouille, and I want The Incredibles to have the permissions, right? So I cascade. It says, once again, you can dig down in the database. Are you sure you want to dig down in the database? I say yes. Okay. And I'm going to give access to two more content types, actually. And I just kind of went by something I wanted to show you. All right. Now, as you're permissioning your content types, you need to take a look and make sure if you see categories being used, a category like genre is there, then that's something else you're going to have to be permission, and that's our next item after content types. That's why it's right after content types, right? So take note of that. So if I also gave this user the news content type, then I'd have to also look down here to topic. That's another category, and you see categories look like this with this little icon right here. Okay. So I also have to take note of that. Demo developer publisher, click publish, and apply. And I don't want to affect all news that's already in the system unless it's already inheriting from, the content type. And let's see, generic. There's generic content, permissions, and I'll add my role, publish, and apply. Okay. So that's my regular content types. And I've taken a note that the topic category and the genre category need to be permissioned. Well, what about uploading files? Okay, so that's whenever I would segregate and say, do I want him to have access to widgets? Maybe I'll let him have the photo gallery widget, and click permissions, or maybe the YouTube widget. Let's go ahead and give him access to permissions to the YouTube widget. And we'll say that he can view the existing widget content that I've created, but he won't be able to create any new ones. So I will just say view, and that's enough to use, and I'll go ahead and apply and reset it so that he's got view to all the previous YouTube videos in the system, but can't add any new ones. Then I'll go to forms, files. He needs to be able to upload files. I'm only going to give him access to this file asset, the default one. Permissions, permission individually, apply this. And of course, he's going to have to be able to upload files. I'm just going to click apply, and he's going to be able to affect new files in the system, but not previous files unless they're also inheriting from this file asset content type. And then we need to give him the ability to add pages. So finally, pages, page asset, not landing pages, go to permissions, permission individually, and add the role there too. Okay. And apply. Okay. So now we've got publish on all of our content types, and we can come over here and start thinking about categories. So then we click over here to categories, and I'm going to give them complete access to all the news content types. So I just click on that category, go to permissions, permission individually, and once again, the only thing that needs more than view are work folders and content types. This is not either, so one check and done, right? Don't need to think, one check done. Categories, genre, permissions, permission individually. For the movie content type there, one check done. Okay. Now let's just say that I want to step down into the children and click here under biography, and I want to look at the biography permissions. Now he's already inheriting his permissions from the parent called genre that we already just permissioned. You can see demo developer publishers here. I'm going to disallow the biography category from this particular user role and drama. No drama. And I applied my permissions. Let's step into categories for this guy, and where's drama? And we'll take it off and apply. And that way, whenever the user goes to add a new movie, they won't be able to add a drama movie or a that other genre that I just took away that I don't remember. Okay, that's it for categories. And now templates. So I want to give my contributor a couple of different column layouts, right? So I would say maybe a Quest 2-column with side navigation. Give them this kind of default template. So go to permissions once again. This one has no permissions whatsoever. I only need view. You don't need anything other than view for templates and containers, right? One checkbox, but you do have to say, this one is using the large column 1 container and also the default 2 container. Do I want them to add content to both of those containers? I don't want them affecting the subnav, so I know that's right out. I'm not going to touch that at all. And I'm going to be mean, and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to allow this user to only change large column 1 content, not default 2 content. Okay, so we'll kind of segregate the permissions in the individual pages. All right. So I've already gone to permissions. I've already applied it to the template, but I'm only going to take record of the large column 1 container for right now. Then I will step back to templates, and I will give them access to my custom intranet movie template. Or I'll give them both of the movie templates. And that movie template, I only want them to have access to my movie container, right? And then I'll also give them a Quest 1 column option, which if I look, that's using the large column 1 as well. Okay, nothing to add to my list, right? Except permissioning this one template. Click view and apply. Don't think about anything. I go to containers, and for my other, kind of standard templates, I only have 1 container to permission. Go to permissions, apply the demo developer publisher, click view and apply. That's it. He's got a permission to both of the containers used by that template. Now, if I go to movie, I click search, got my movie, I'll give him access to that template as well. And there's a container called movies. templates. I give them access to the other one too, right? Permissions, no. I'll give them access. And this one had, this one, if it's an advanced template, you'd have to read it and say, okay, the small column, no, I don't want to give them access to the small column. The movies container, I'll give them access into the large column 1. That's fine. And I will deny access to the medium column container. Okay, so now I come here to containers after I've taken note of all my movie containers. I can even target MOV, click search, it instantly finds that movie container there. I can click edit and go to permissions, and just once again, that one check view that gives them the ability to use the container. Okay, and then that large column 1 container. So I guess I'll just reset and large column 1 container, and he's already there. That was my, yeah. And I'll give him access to medium column 2 that's used by that other one as well. And that is it. Okay. All right. So we've got templates and containers, and now we're done. Okay. Now the only thing we need to do is create a new user and give the user the role. Right. But before we do that, we're also going to go to roles and tools, and we're going to create that second role that I talked about, which only is tools. It's just a real basic role. So I'm going to add a new role, and I'm going to call this generic publisher. And here I'll just gen pub, something like that. Can grant users roles tools, click save. And then for generic publisher, I'm going to do one thing and one thing only for every single one of my publishers. I'm going to go to tools. I'm going to say, there's 2 different site browsers configured here. One's got templates, containers, time machine, and publishing queue. I'm going to pick site editor, but I'm going to edit this and I'm going to add time machine and publishing queue and the site browser. So I can click here and maybe I want to call it browser. You can do whatever you want, if I can put my finger on the right keys. And then here under the tools, in addition to the site browser, I'm going to give them the time machine so I can start typing time. There we go. You have to click add. So now it becomes part of the submenu. And we want the push publishing queue. There we go. It's called publishing queue. Okay. And click save. And then I'm going to check box browser, content, and the home tab. But in the home tab, I don't want them seeing the Google Analytics dashboard, and I don't want to add another two tool groups. So I'm just going to take away that, certainly the legacy dashboard and the regular dashboard. I'm just going to make it just workflow tasks, and that's it. Okay. So my generic publisher tools. I want home. I want browser and content, and click save. That is it. All right. I don't need to do anything more with the generic publisher, and the user is going to get generic publisher, so will every other publisher in every single role. And then I'm going to give the specific development publisher guy access to this demo developer publisher role as well. So now I'm going to go to the users, the user manager over here, and click on the action palette and add a user. So I'm just going to add myself to the system. Dean Gonzalez. I'm just going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You need to have at least 6 digits in a password. Second, you save the user, then you can go ahead and say demo developer publisher plus generic publisher. Move that over and click save. And now you're done and you're ready to test the user because he's got all the roles he needs that give him access to his portlets, generic publisher, and then the actual objects and the site browser tree and the content types and the categories and all that stuff. So how do you test the new user that you just assigned to those 2 roles? You click in here and you say log in as. So I'm going to log in as me. Click in Dean, click that, click change, and now I'm logging in as this user. Okay, and right after we test everything here and show you, I promise you I'll take a break because we were gone over an hour here. So, all right. The first thing it took me to under home, I took away the Google Analytics dashboard. Don't want to confuse my users. Just they log in, they go straight to their workflow tasks. They see the jobs that people have assigned to them. Very, very simple, right? I click on the site browser, I click on browser, and there it is. Can they edit my host and call my domain a completely different thing? No. Can they edit the department's parent folder and call that something else so then everybody's really confused? No. Can they edit the development folder and say, I don't work in development anymore, I work in Chuck E. Cheese? No, they can't. Okay. So you've taken away anything dangerous that they could possibly do, but can the user still do work in the area that they actually manage? Sure. And then if they create pages or folders or anything that they shouldn't be, hey, they're webmasters, they're masters of their own domain and their own department, and they should have control over those things and manage them properly. So now they can create new pages, new images or files, and upload. If I create a new image or file, I only give them the access to file asset, not the document file type. So if I do new image or file, I click on file asset, oh, there is no document file type that they can upload, right? So it's just a one select. Can he upload a file, Guardians of the Galaxy, and upload it and save and publish it? Yes, he can. Okay, good. Got Guardians over there. I should have put that in the images, but can he create a new page? So image or file. Oh, I don't want a new image or file. We already did that. New page. And which type of page asset can he create? Only the regular page asset, not the landing pages, right? So permissions fully working here. If he goes to create a new page, test page, then what templates can he see and use? Only the ones that I said, right? So there's the 2 movie templates we created earlier in our training, and then the Quest 1 column and 2 column just for a little bit of variety, right? So I will choose the 2 column with side nav had one container that would deny this user. So I actually want to choose that one to show that. Got to show the good stuff and the bad stuff as well, what they can and they can't do, right? And so now I'm going to click in edit mode on this container, and I'll see if I can add something to the area that I did give them permissions to. If I click on content, what types of content that can this user create? And in this particular container, it would only be generic content and news. The movie content is not on this container. It's not allowed, right? So if he's using this template, then he's going to be able to, he has permissions to news and generic content. If he goes to click generic content, you notice we have tons of generic content in the system, but it didn't cascade permissions. So all of the current content that exists in the database, I've protected from this user. It's your option. It's whatever you want to do. Whenever we go to movies, you're going to see he gets a full list of prior content created using that content type because I did cascade on movies. Okay. Hopefully that's clear. But he can add new. So it can add a new generic content and just say, something new, save. Now, I didn't give him permissions to demo.dotCMS.com. I didn't give him to save content to the host so that I want you to watch this fail. This is development department content. And then some big message here, right? Hopefully you'd have to create more content than that. We try to click save and publish, and it says, I'm sorry, buddy, but you do not have access to save this asset to the, the host or folder field that you're trying to save to. That's quite expected. And so whenever this user drills down using this little host or folder field, what does he see? Departments. Can he save to departments either? No, he doesn't have access to save content to that departments folder. He does have access to save to the development directory. So we would have to choose that, save and publish, and now it's going to save that content to that specific area. All right. And this content is adopting the permissions from the folder it was saved to. So the only people, if I create 40 different other user roles and assign them to other departments, even though they have access to generic content, they're not going to be able to see this generic content because where does this generic content live? It lives in the development department, and the only other people that can see it are roles or users that have access to child content in the development directory. Whenever you have a site or folder field, which I would suggest that there's never a reason not to create a content type that doesn't have one, try to always add it, unless you want a free-for-all over the content. Anyone you give access to the content type, they all can edit each other's content, reuse it on each other's pages, delete it. You see the problem now, right? Don't give different departments access to each other's content. They'll confuse the titles, something, and so you want to set permissions right for your clients. Okay, so Now, what about this area down here? Can I add new content over here and say, yes, I want to add some new generic content, and we're going to invade this container as well. And I save and publish and say, sorry. Oh, well, that first error is he's still saving to the wrong area. But even if he chooses the right area, it should not actually, unless I accidentally did give him permissions over here. Okay, well, it actually didn't. It didn't allow him to do so. It probably, the error message just flashed too fast, but it denied him, right? Could not save it the way he could over here. Okay, so far permissioning's working perfect. Let's go over to the Content Search Manager and look at movies as well. He's able to see those movies, right? If we go to add a new movie, I want to check the categories on those movies and see if he can add drama or biography. I said no, he can't. So if I click here and I try to look for drama, it's missing, right? If I try to look for, what was the other one? Biography. So there's no B's, right? So exactly the granular permissions that I said this user would be able to do, that's exactly what they're able to do. So now I can still choose Leon the Professional. I don't like that movie quite a lot. And some release date, whatever. I'll pick a past one so it'll automatically publish. And he can use that, genre there. Put some category and then put some description. Save and publish. And now I've added that Leon the Professional to the, I picked a future date. So it's working as expected. Save and publish. Now it allows me to publish, right? That's Time Machine working properly. Okay. So he's able to, he added that to the system here, but now can he add it to a page? So let's go to our test page here, flip our template so we can go to page properties, flip the template immediately over to Dean's movie template, save. And now I've got a different template. Now I can switch back to my other template immediately and I'll see my content come back. But this uses different containers. This one uses the Dean's movie container, right? And because it uses the Dean's movie container, I can see what content types are allowed, generic content or movies. I can click all and see all of them. I can pick either my movies or I can pick my generic content, or I could say, no, I just want to see the movies, and it instantly filters. And then of course I can filter by any of these things over here. I only want to see action, and now it just finds Leon the Professional and The Incredibles. I want to just do animation. It only is Ratatouille here, right? Okay, so I actually want to deselect that, click search, select Leon the Professional. Now Leon the Professional is there in the content. I'm super zoomed in here on my iMac just to make things bigger for you, so that's why it's affecting my bleed on my container there. So, and what was this one? Let's see. I don't know if I gave him permissions over here. No, I didn't. See, that's that default to container again. So good. That's working right. This user can make, save pages to this particular folder, right? Other permissions. I think we've covered everything. Categories, templates, containers, yeah. I guess the only thing we did not add was news. And so we can see in this list, and then with the YouTube, I knew I was missing something. Okay, so news, I did not cascade for news either. I only cascaded for movies, so we can't access the prior news, but can create new news. It, respects my geolocation. I can open up my map and find myself. I'm right here in Costa Rica, and add whatever tag. If I put great, he has access to the great acting tag. Put in some new story. And click here and to see if he has access to the topic category. He does. He can make something about investment banking, put a little caption down here, choose an image or file, and add a new headline. Now, once again, if we try to save right now, it'll error out because he's on demo.dotCMS.com here. He needs to save to his department directory, right? Okay, so it's all saved, and that new content has been created in the system to publish on 8/8. Right? So everything's working great, but what about widgets? Okay, so go back to my test page, and I want to add a movie. Let me see if, oh, he doesn't have access to there. I want to give him access. Okay, so I'm going to add widget over here to this side, and I said YouTube. All right. So if I search for the YouTube movie widgets, here it is. And if I click on new YouTube widget, can I search for mutual funds? Something like that, and click search. Sure, it'll find mutual funds on YouTube. I can click this guy who's talking about mutual funds. It'll grab all of the data, but I did not give him, I only gave him view permissions. So whenever I click save, you don't have access. What can he do then? Well, he can add, I told him, and I'll train him, that I gave him access to be able to use the ones I already have. So if I want to, he can select the movie review, and then there's my Ratatouille movie review. If you remember, we created that earlier. And now if I zoom out a little bit, because I'm super zoomed in here just for you guys, then maybe I can actually drag and drop this content around and you can see it happen, right? And then I'll go back to my actual, I'm zoomed in on my system, on my system preferences on my screen resolution. So it'd be easier for you to view. Okay. So that is the widget. Of course, it'll play. It was previously selected. Okay. And so we've tested all of our permissions. Now, we already covered the can grant on that user role. I'm going to open up for questions in just a second. We're going to take a break. Role permission inheritance. So let's just say this guy, I'm going to log out as Dean, and I'm going to log in as, I'm going to go to system roles. And I'm going to say, what if he needs an assistant? So demo development publisher needs an assistant. I can click on demo developer publisher, and then I could create a new role called demo developer assistant or contributor. Demo. And now whenever I click save, then what that means is that will nest underneath the parent role. And then anything I give to the developer contributor, the demo developer publisher will automatically get. Okay. So let's test that just super quick. Go to content types and just give this guy access to some other new content type. Let's give him access to the promotion content type because there wasn't a reason. Promotion content type. This one has no host or folder field. So I have a warning for you here on best practices. So I'm going to permission individually and add, not the demo developer publisher, I'm going to add this contributor guy. And say he has edit permissions over this and click apply. Okay. He's the only one here. However, and maybe I would reset over all the existing promotions in the system. Okay. Now, whenever I go to log in as my user that doesn't even have this role, which is the parent, okay, then I go to content and search, and then I go to, all right, well, maybe it hasn't cascaded in there yet, but he should get access immediately as soon as it finishes cascading the permissions there over all of the promotion content in the system, and he should inherit from that role. So let me just go to maintenance, make sure I flush all caches, and see if this is something in 5.0 that we need to address before we release it. Let me say types and tags, promo, and use the contributor. It didn't. It should have automatically added the parent role as well. So let's see. Let's try logging into him one more time. And if I go to promo as the admin and I create a new promo, let's just check the permissions. Yeah, whatever. This probably has to be a real link. And save and publish that new promo. Let me check the permissions on the new promo. He's there too. Log out and try one. Oh, I didn't want to do that. And now let me log in as. And let's see, he should be seeing the ability to add new promotion. There it is. Okay, just had to cascade in the system. Well, I'm glad that we don't have to report a bug there. Okay, so there's the promo content. So even though my user does not have access to this content type, the child role that he manages does have access to this promotion content type. And by proxy, he gets management over anything that user does. Now, if you wanted to give this user additional permissions over promotion in addition to what that other user has, then you would have to go to the promo content type and you would have to add the publish permissions, because right now, if you look, he's only got the same exact access as the other guy. He can only click save. He can't save and publish. Right. But at least the person who he's managing, the people who he's managing, can't do things that he doesn't have access to. And it makes your life as a webmaster much easier, because anything that you give to the children, the child roles, will automatically, the managers will get access to without you having to go back and redo everything. If there's 3 different levels of roles 3 different times, right? So that's a nice convenience there. Okay, so now let me log. But I wanted to, well, I'll just go in here as admin. Okay, this is the wrong thing about setting up a content type like this. You notice that I just instantly saved this and I didn't have to choose a host or folder. So that this means the permissions for this promotion content doesn't come from where it's saved to. So it's never exclusive at all. This is the type of content that whenever you create it, everyone who you give permissions to the promotion content type, you can see here, the promotion content type is the parent of this content. So if you have 40 different departments that all can create promotions or news or something like that, and you don't put a host or folder field, then everyone will be able to see everyone else's content, even if they're not in the same department. If you put a host or folder field and then you only give them permissions on the site browser to save to specific areas of the website, right? Then all of them can use the same content type. Every single department, human resources and support, but support will only see promotions from supports, that have to do with support. Development will only see, promotions that have to do with development, and human resources same. But right now, they all will be able to see each other's promotions because the promotion content type does not have, go to promo, it does not have this field right here, which is called site or folder, but I'm going to add it right now. And I'm going to say it's required and user searchable and click save. Okay. Then if we go back to the content now that content type I think is done right, and I can open it up here and I can say this is a developer promo. Now, if I want all sites to see this content, I want it to publish to pull. So if I'm dynamically pulling promotions, I leave the value here at system host. The global website I created for my VTL. So that is not a global, maybe I should name that differently, like a, VTL repository or something like that. System host is all host content. So if you need to create a news item that's for all your websites, that's the way we kind of build in our queries. And you can control those queries and not make your polls work that way, but system host would be for all site content. But if we're calling this developer promo, then it's right here under departments, and development. That's where I'd save this. I lock it for editing. I save and publish. And now the permissions on this content don't come from the promo content type. If we look at it, it comes from the department's development directory, and the only people that have access to it are demo developers, right? So if I saved, let me go ahead and save this content. I'll save this as support department content. Well, to do that, I'd have to just, let me see, because that doesn't actually have a role. So I'll just create one role here super fast, support role. Go to the support department, break it away, give it its own permissions, and just apply that one role, right? So on permission individually, and go to the support role, click add, and take away the developer which was being inherited from the host. Let's say my support guy can do all of this stuff. And apply. Okay, now developer's role is not on here. And I'm going to create this is going to be a support. And save that to the same department's directory, but this time save it into support. I lock for editing, I save and publish. My permissions now come from the support department, and his role isn't on there, the developer guy. So now whenever we log back in as, everybody's forced now to save to where they have permissions. I was logged in as the default administrator, so I could do it all. And now he goes to content and searching for content, and he goes to promotion, and he sees developer promo and the other guys who we haven't repermissioned, but he doesn't see support at all, right? So that's the way you keep content mutually exclusive, is by adding those host or folder fields. Okay, system host would be for all sites, and we automatically recommend even here on our content search manager. So if we look at promos, and we edit it, maybe sort it by title, we have a little suggester here that shows you your queries and how to build dynamic pulls. And here's our dynamic pull here. Okay. And we automatically include the system host content in all of our queries. But you could say, no, I don't want to pull all site content. I only want to pull content from this one host. And the only thing you'd have to do is you just have to take and say, I only want the demo host. We obviously teach webmasters how to do this in our web developer training. And I don't want to pull content for all sites. I only want to pull for the local site I'm on. So we recommend that you can pull the local host you're on, and this is just the identifier for the local host I'm on, plus the system host. We recommend you build your widgets that way, but if you want to exclude content, and this will pull my promotions, obviously, that query. We'll show that in the web developer training. Okay, so that's what that host or folder field is for, and what system host is, or publishing to an individual host or an individual folder. That's how it affects your permissions. All right. And we already covered category permission inheritance. The only last thing before we take a break is locking a role, and that takes less than 60 seconds to show. So we come over here to roles, and we say, okay, I've got my demo developer publisher is perfect. I want to lock it because I don't want even other admins to change it. It says, are you sure you want to lock this role? If I do that, then I come over here to the site browser and I look at something he's permissioned to, and I try to edit the permissions there. I can't. It just locks on folders, content, anything that this developer is on. It just reminds other developers, hey, I've locked this for a reason. I really would appreciate, even my God level CMS administrators, I'd like you to please stay away from this. Right? So it's just your, don't tread on me message. However, if they really are a God level user, they only have to come here to roles and tools and say, oh, no, you don't, and unlock it. And there you go. Right? But it's just a little helpful stay away reminder, even between sysadmins. Okay. All right. So that is dotCMS permission.
Thanks, Dean, for these great insights. We're going to open up for questions now. Thanks for joining this training. We hope it was helpful. Please reach out to me if you would like to discuss and schedule a tailored training for your team.